everyone, and welcome back to our show. I'm delighted to see such a wonderfully enthusiastic audience cheering us on. This program is called Background Interview, and I'm your host, Lily. In this series, we invite historical figures from around the world, legends who have shaped art, science, philosophy, and more, to join us on stage and share their stories. Whether you're on your way to work, tidying up your home, studying for an exam, or simply relaxing in the background, this is the perfect show to enrich your mind while you go about your day. So, let me share something funny from my own life recently. I was fixing my old bicycle the other day, convinced I'd be done in 10 minutes. I got out my wrench, my oil can, and a big grin of confidence. 3 hours later, the bike was in pieces, and I still couldn't get the chain back on. Well, at least it taught me never to underestimate an easy chore. Now, let's turn from my minor mechanical misadventures to a true genius of invention and creativity. Today, we have a guest who needs little introduction, one of the greatest Renaissance masters, an innovator in science, engineering, and of course, painting. Please give a warm welcome to the one and only Leonardo da Vinci.
Greetings, everyone. Very nice to see you all. I'm truly honored to be here with all of you.
Wonderful to have you, Leonardo. Please take a seat so we can begin our conversation.
Thank you, Lily. I'm looking forward to sharing a glimpse of my life and inspirations.
I know the audience can't wait to hear everything you have to say. But first, for those who may not be familiar with the details, could you introduce yourself in your own words?
Certainly. My name is Leonardo da Vinci. I was born in the mid-15th century in a small village called Vinci, in Tuscany. I'm often referred to as an artist, inventor, engineer, anatomist, and much more. During my time, I explored a wide range of fields, all fueled by my insatiable curiosity about the natural world.
That's quite the introduction, and it hints at the incredible variety of pursuits that occupied your life. I'm sure we'll dive deep into those soon. But before we get serious, I want to mention a funny anecdote I heard. Apparently, you were known for occasionally leaving paintings unfinished, because another idea would captivate your interest. Is that right?
Yes, that has followed me through history. I was often so enthralled by new techniques or new investigations, perhaps an anatomical study, or the effects of light and shadow, that I found it challenging to declare a painting complete. In a sense, I felt works of art are never truly done. Well, I had many unhappy clients who got so tired of waiting for me to finish the work.
That perpetual quest for perfection. It must have been both thrilling and frustrating. All right, everyone, today's show is dedicated to exploring the life of Leonardo da Vinci in depth. We've selected several themes to guide us: his early years in Vinci, his apprenticeship under Verrocchio, his innovative painting methods, his scientific explorations, his mirror-written notebooks, and so much more. We'll dig into every corner of his fascinating story. So, Leonardo, let's start with your childhood. You were born in the village of Vinci, and you've mentioned your out-of-wedlock birth-shaped parts of your upbringing. Could you tell us more about the environment that molded you in those formative years?
Gladly. My earliest memories revolve around the rolling hills and gentle streams of Vinci. Being a non-legitimate child of my father, Ser Piero da Vinci, and a woman named Caterina, I didn't always fit neatly into conventional family structures. However, I was never entirely isolated. My father acknowledged me, and I moved among different households at times. One of the key aspects of my childhood was my freedom to explore. I was forever wandering outdoors, watching the way water flowed in small rivulets, observing the shapes of leaves, and letting my eyes roam across the landscape. That sense of direct observation stayed with me for my entire life. I've always said that nature was my greatest teacher. I also encountered various social attitudes toward my illegitimacy. It meant I wasn't initially subjected to some of the more rigid expectations placed on children of official marriages. Oddly enough, that gave me a certain liberty to roam intellectually as well, since I wasn't strictly groomed for a particular profession or role in the family business. So in short, the environment, both natural and social, led me to value curiosity and hands-on learning from a young age. I had no shortage of questions about the world around me, and I tried to find answers in the land, in the sky, and in every shape I encountered.
That sounds like a wonderful grounding in curiosity. It's fascinating to think that a child roaming the Tuscan countryside might later become the Renaissance figure we all admire. Let's jump forward to your time in Florence, those early days under the mentorship of Andrea del Verrocchio. How did that shape your artistic development?
Verrocchio's workshop was a vibrant hub of creativity. There, I learned not just painting but also sculpture, metalworking, and even some mechanical arts. Verrocchio himself was a brilliant artist, though he could be stern with students who lacked dedication. I thrived on his challenges because they pushed me to perfect my techniques. One notable story is that I painted an angel in one of Verrocchio's commissioned works. As legend has it, he was so impressed by the subtlety of the drapery and the realism in the angel's face that he supposedly resolved never to paint again. While that tale is likely embellished, it reflects the spark Verrocchio saw in my work. In those days, Florence was abuzz with the new intellectual climate of the Renaissance. People were studying ancient Greek texts, discussing geometry, perspective, and the interplay of science and art. I was captivated by the interplay of these fields, which motivated me to explore everything from the mathematics of proportion to the emotional expressions in portraiture. Eventually, I began experimenting with perspective in new ways, such as investigating how light fell on objects in a carefully controlled environment. I also became interested in capturing the subtle gradations between light and dark that later came to be called sfumato. This was a pivotal time that set the course for my future pursuits, both artistic and scientific.
We'll certainly get to your major masterpieces soon, particularly The Last Supper and the Mona Lisa. But before that, I want to expand on your early experiences. You mentioned studying geometry. Did that study start while you were still in Verrocchio's workshop, or later?
It began around that time, and continued throughout my life. I initially encountered geometry in the context of perspective, how to represent three-dimensional reality on a two-dimensional surface accurately. But as I dug deeper, I realized geometry is fundamental to understanding nature's forms. Whether in the spiral arrangement of shells or the proportions of the human body, geometry underlies much of what we see. That fascination also led me to architecture and engineering concepts. In Florence, you couldn't help but be inspired by the great architectural works arising in the city. Brunelleschi's dome, for instance, was a marvel of geometric innovation. I wanted to push such ideas further, to see how geometry could solve practical problems and create more perfect, harmonious works of art.
Your passion for detail is truly inspiring. Now, let's dive into your major works. The Last Supper is iconic worldwide, and the Mona Lisa might be the single most recognized painting on the planet. Could you share a bit of the behind-the-scenes process for each?
Of course. For The Last Supper, I was commissioned by Ludovico Sforza for the refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. Traditionally, fresco painting involved working on wet plaster, requiring rapid completion before it dried. But my methodical nature made me uneasy with the strict pace fresco demanded. I wanted more time to refine expressions and details, so I experimented with a different medium. Sadly, that experimental technique led to some early deterioration. Even so, I poured my efforts into capturing the apostles' emotional reactions. At the moment Christ reveals one among them will betray him. Each figure's posture, gesture, and facial expression had to be distinct, telling a story through their movement. That painting was as much a study of human psychology as it was of composition. For the Mona Lisa, I was enthralled by the challenge of capturing the living essence of a subject. I employed sfumato to blend tones delicately, creating the illusion of flesh and a subtle sense of motion in her facial muscles. People speak often of her enigmatic smile. In truth, I was striving to represent that fleeting expression people wear when deep in thought, somewhere between amusement and reflection. As for the actual identity of the model, it's commonly believed to be Lisa Gherardini, wife of Francesco del Giocondo. I don't deny the theory. I found her serene presence captivating. Anyway, over time, the painting became a personal obsession. I carried it with me on my travels, continually touching it up, never fully satisfied that it was complete. Perhaps that's one reason it's shrouded in so much mystique.
Speaking of completion, you've garnered a reputation for not finishing certain works or revisiting them after many years. What drove that behavior?
I suppose one could say my mind was always running ahead of my brush. The moment I discovered a new technique or a new insight into anatomy, I wanted to incorporate it, even if it meant drastically revising a piece. Patrons found this frustrating, of course. But in my view, a work of art was an extension of my evolving understanding, so how could I fix it at one point in time if my understanding kept growing?
Your devotion to refinement definitely shines through in your extant works, even if it meant you left some in partial states. Let's shift from painting to your roles as scientist and inventor. In your notebooks, we see sketches of flying machines, early tanks, diving suits, and more. How did you conceive these ideas in such a period?
I always looked to nature for instruction. Birds in flight, the fluid movement of water, the mechanics of the human body. These were my inspirations. I reasoned that if a bird could remain aloft, there must be fundamental principles of lift and propulsion that we could replicate. My sketches reflect attempts to glean these principles from observation and then apply them to man-made devices. Similarly, in the realm of warfare, I despised violence, but I was often employed by rulers who needed innovative methods. So I created designs for better fortifications, siege engines, or even a rudimentary tank. Deep down, I hoped that if a conflict was resolved quickly or prevented by a show of superior engineering, fewer lives might be lost. But I was also a dreamer. My designs for a flying machine were never fully tested in my time. The materials available, heavy wood, not particularly flexible glues, and so forth, were limiting. Still, I believed wholeheartedly in the possibility of human flight if the correct understanding of aerodynamics could be found.
You also conducted anatomical studies, dissecting human cadavers. That must have been controversial in your era.
Indeed, it had to be done in secrecy, but I felt it was essential to observe the human body firsthand to understand how bones, muscles, and organs interact. Without that knowledge, I wouldn't have been satisfied in my attempts to depict the body accurately in art, nor could I have advanced the field of medical understanding. My interest in anatomy transcended mere art, though. I was curious about the heart's valves, the flow of blood, the arrangement of veins. That direct observation gave me insights that were quite radical for the time. Of course, I had to be discreet, as the church had its reservations about dissection.
What about your famous mirror writing? People speculate it was to keep your notes secret. Others say it was just easier for you as a left-hander. Which is correct?
A bit of both. As a left-hander, writing from right to left can be more comfortable, especially when dealing with quill and ink. But yes, it also served to deter casual onlookers from reading my private notes. Some of my ideas might have upset the authorities, or might have seemed heretical, or even just threatened the interests of certain patrons. So mirror writing was a small layer of security.
That sense of secrecy adds to your mystique, certainly. Now, turning to a more personal question, you were so multifaceted: artist, scientist, engineer, musician, stage designer. Did you ever feel overwhelmed by these diverse passions?
Overwhelmed at times, yes. But more often, I felt invigorated. My mind simply couldn't confine itself to a single discipline. The Renaissance was an era that encouraged broad thinking, though even then, people sometimes criticized me for lacking focus. I found synergy among different fields. Study of anatomy helped my painting. Understanding geometry helped my engineering designs. It all overlapped in beautiful ways.
That synergy is precisely why you're called a Renaissance man. Let's talk about your patrons. The Medici family in Florence, Ludovico Sforza in Milan, and eventually King Francis I in France. How did working with these powerful figures shape your creativity or constrain it?
Patrons were vital in providing resources and protection. The Medicis fostered a cultural environment that valued art and innovation, so Florence was an excellent incubator for my talents. Under Ludovico Sforza, I had the opportunity to delve into large-scale engineering and architecture projects. He saw me as more than just a painter. He engaged me to redesign city defenses and create festivals at court. King Francis I was perhaps the most open-minded, giving me a final refuge in France. I spent my last years near Amboise in relative comfort, continuing to refine my notes and designs. In each patron I had to balance my own vision with their political and personal aims. Sometimes it meant I had to keep certain ideas hidden if I sensed they wouldn't be well received.
So you eventually moved to France near the end of your life. Could you describe your final years?
They were a blend of reflection and continued curiosity. Though my physical strength waned, I had time to organize my manuscripts, to think about the future of these ideas. I recall pondering how the seeds I'd planted might germinate in future generations. King Francis I admired my wisdom and often visited me to discuss art, science, and philosophy. That encouragement gave me a sense of peace and purpose, even as I felt my years slipping away.
We're all grateful you left behind so many notebooks, sketches, and paintings to inspire generations. Now, let me ask the audience directly. Was there anything in this conversation that surprised you about Leonardo da Vinci's journey? Wonderful. Next, we have a few letters and messages from our listeners, and then we'll open it up to the live audience here in the studio. Our first question comes from Victoria in Boston, who writes, Leonardo, you mentioned dissecting bodies secretly. Did you ever face direct opposition or punishment for it during your lifetime?
Thank you, Victoria. I was never formally punished, but I did have to be very cautious. I dissected at hospitals or in private residences under the quiet cooperation of certain officials. I was once warned that if I drew too much attention, it might lead to an inquiry by the church. I had to balance my thirst for knowledge with the social and religious climate of the time.
That must have been nerve-wracking. Our second question is from Daniel in Toronto. He asks, how do you maintain motivation across so many fields without burning out?
An excellent question. My motivation came from an unwavering sense of wonder. There was always a new puzzle to solve, a new phenomenon to observe. I found that switching between disciplines could actually rejuvenate me. When I grew tired of painting, I moved to anatomy. If anatomy felt heavy, I turned to geometry. The variety kept me from stagnating.
That's really insightful. Our third question is from Maria in Florence. Fitting. She says, I'm Italian and proud of our Renaissance heritage. If you were alive in modern Italy, what would you want to explore first?
Modern Italy. I imagine so many architectural marvels have risen since my time. I'd likely study the advanced materials now available, lightweight metals, plastics, carbon fibers, and see how they could revolutionize flight. I'd also love to explore modern medical imaging techniques to understand the body even more thoroughly. Truly, it would be thrilling to see the results of centuries of progress.
Thank you for those wonderful questions, everyone. Now, let's hear from our live audience. Folks, are you ready? Yes, I see a hand raised over there. I'll come down from the stage to you. While I head over, allow me a tiny comedic interlude. Who knew hosting a show could double as a cardio workout? Hello, great to meet you. May I ask your name? All right, Jason, lovely name. What's on your mind? Oh, that's a fantastic question, Jason. Let me paraphrase for everyone here. Leonardo, Jason wonders if you ever used your art or designs to subtly critique political or social issues of your time.
Interesting query. In certain pieces, I might embed symbolic elements, like how a painting's composition could hint at tensions within a patron's court. But mostly, I tread carefully. I wasn't a firebrand agitator. However, in my personal journals, I freely questioned the ethics of war, the role of religious dogma, and the responsibilities of those in power.
Thank you, Leonardo. And thank you, Jason, for that thought-provoking question. Anyone else? Yes, you in the second row. Let me walk over there. Excuse me as I slip through. This is quite the interactive show today, isn't it? You see me walking right in front of you, nearly stepping on your toes. Hello. Thanks for waiting. What's your name? Abigail, nice to meet you. So what would you like to ask Leonardo da Vinci? I see. Fascinating angle. I'll restate it to make sure we're all on the same page. Leonardo, Abigail wants to know about your relationship with other artists like Michelangelo and Botticelli. Did you ever feel rivalry or tension, or was it more about mutual inspiration?
Florence was quite a competitive environment with many brilliant minds. There was certainly a spirit of rivalry, especially with Michelangelo. We had different temperaments. He could be quite fiery, while I was more reserved, but at the same time we were propelled forward by each other's innovations. As for Botticelli, I respected his delicate lines and allegorical themes. We might not have seen eye to eye on every technique, but I believe the city's collective genius sprang from that blend of diverse visions.
Thank you, Leonardo, and thank you, Abigail, for the question. Now, do we have one more question in the audience? Yes, in the corner there. I'll head over. Maybe I should patent a new form of hostess aerobics after this. Hello. Thanks for your patience. May I ask your name? Michelle. A pleasure. What's your question for our guest? All right, Michelle, that's an intriguing question. Let me pass it along. Leonardo, Michelle is curious about your views on faith and science. You alluded to them earlier, but did you ever feel torn between religious devotion and your pursuit of empirical knowledge?
I did wrestle with it. I believed God gave humans the capacity to discover truths about creation. So science and faith need not be enemies. However, the Church's stance could be rigid. I tried to reconcile them by seeking to understand the natural laws, seeing it as a way of appreciating the divine mind. Yet I kept certain discoveries private if I felt they might provoke unnecessary controversy.
Thank you, Leonardo, for explaining that. And thank you, Michelle, for bringing up such a profound topic. Now, as I walk back to the stage, let's give a big round of applause to our audience for these wonderful questions.
I appreciate the enthusiasm and the depth of these inquiries. They remind me of the lively discussions I once had in the courts of Italy and France.
Thank you again, everyone. I'd like to know which question or topic our listeners connected with most. Was it about your hidden symbolism, your relationships with other Renaissance artists, or your perspective on faith and science? As for me, there's still so much I personally want to ask you, Leonardo. If you don't mind, I'd like to throw in a few questions of my own.
Of course, I'm here to satisfy as much curiosity as time allows.
First, is there a memory of your early experiments? Maybe something that failed spectacularly, that actually guided you to future success?
I recall trying to create a giant mechanical bird in my workshop in Milan. I'd miscalculated the weight of the frame. When I attempted to demonstrate it, one of the wings snapped off before it even left the ground. Embarrassing, yes, but it taught me the importance of thoroughly testing each component's structural integrity. It also led me to refine my sketches for gliders, balancing form and function more rigorously.
Wonderful. I can imagine the comedic aspect of a wing snapping off, yet also the deep lesson learned. Another question, did you ever dream of forming an academy or a school to systematically pass on your knowledge?
Yes, I entertained that notion. I pictured a studio where painting, sculpture, geometry, anatomy, and engineering were taught in unison. My notebooks were partly an attempt to record a curriculum of sorts. Unfortunately, I never found the perfect environment to establish such a school. But perhaps some portion of that dream lives on in modern universities and art institutions.
I think you'd be pleased to see the interdisciplinary approach we're striving for today. Now, I have a surprise for you. I'd like to introduce a little quiz segment to keep things lively.
A quiz, you say? I'm intrigued.
Yes, let's move on to our quiz corner, folks. Music, please. All right, dear audience, here's the first question about Leonardo da Vinci. True or false? He once planned an elaborate system of canals in Florence to redirect the Arno River. If you think it's true, make a fist. If you think it's false, show an open palm. So many fists in the air. Let's see. Leonardo, is that true?
It is indeed true. The idea was to improve trade and possibly serve a defensive purpose. Though it was never fully realized, the plan showed my ongoing fascination with water management and engineering.
There you have it. Well done, everyone who raised their fists. Let's go to the second question. Did Leonardo da Vinci conduct experiments on how sound travels by building a special resonance machine? Fist if you think that's correct, palm if you don't. All right, looks like a mixed response. Some are uncertain. Leonardo, what's the verdict?
I did experiment with acoustics, but not with a machine that you might call a resonance machine in the modern sense. I studied echoes in various chambers, tested how sound waves might bounce, but I never built a distinct mechanical device dedicated solely to resonance measurement. So that statement is more false than true, I would say.
Tricky question. So the correct answer is false. Great job to those who showed open palms. All right, that's our quiz for today. Let's have a big hand for our brilliant guest once again. Well, folks, I have a bad news. Sadly, the time has come for us to wrap up our program.
Thank you for that good-natured booing, everyone. It's heartening to see you're enjoying yourselves so thoroughly.
We certainly are. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear about your life, from your early days under the Tuscan sun to your final work in France, your groundbreaking scientific pursuits, and your endless artistic curiosities.
My thanks to you, Lily, for guiding such a thorough conversation, and thanks to our wonderful audience for your insightful questions.
Before you take your leave, could we have one final comment from you on how you see the legacy of your life's work?
Of course. If anything, I hope my story teaches that curiosity is the seed of all discovery. From the swirling patterns of water to the smallest details of anatomy, I found that careful observation reveals hidden wonders. Let us keep our eyes and minds open, always.
That's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you, Leonardo, for everything you've shared.
You're very welcome. And now, I must depart. Goodbye. May your own journeys be filled with awe and inspiration.
To our marvelous audience in the theater and to everyone listening at home or on the go, thank you so much for being part of this journey today. Let me ask you, what part of Leonardo da Vinci's story did you find most memorable? Was it his clandestine dissections or perhaps his early childhood roaming the Tuscan hills? And now it's time for our special famous quote corner. Come on, music, please. Learning never exhausts the mind. This quote is famously attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, capturing the boundless nature of curiosity. To me, it means that the more we explore, the more energized we become. Kind of the opposite of physical exhaustion. Although, let's be honest, if I try to learn advanced quantum physics in one sitting, I might take a nap halfway through. What do you think about this quote, dear listeners? Does learning invigorate you, or do you ever find it overwhelming? This time, we really are getting close to the end of today's show. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this program, please subscribe, give us a like or rating, and let us know in the comments who you'd like to see us invite next. Remember, you can always re-listen if you missed any part while multitasking. Check out our podcast versions and the different language editions we offer, which are perfect for language learners or anyone who needs friendly voices in the background. Sometimes I even fall asleep to these myself. It's like a calm bedtime story. Our next episode features a very famous individual, but I won't spoil the name. Let's just say you're in for another brilliant conversation. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time, this is Lily signing off, saying stay curious and keep dreaming. Thank you, everyone. Farewell and see you soon. Wow, that was incredible. The legendary Leonardo da Vinci right in front of me. I must admit, I was very nervous. Actually, I really wanted to ask him if he ever hid codes in the Mona Lisa, but I was too nervous to bring it up in front of everyone. Maybe next time I'll gather the courage. Until then, keep dreaming, everyone.